Let's talk for a few minutes about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. How to approach such an influential classic novel. There's a number of ways. The place I'm going to begin is by making some observations about the novel and then coming back to maybe ask why such would be the case. When the novel was published, it was immediately decried as a work of atheism. Religious advocates immediately were quick to not only condemn the novel, but to condemn the sharing of the novel with any readers. Question, why? Let's point out that these religious aficionados were intelligent enough and sophisticated enough to not condemn the novel because the novel suggested that the dead could be brought back to life. Okay, so in other words, they read the novel as a work of mythology on that count. Okay, so they were not upset about you shouldn't be playing God, that God argument. Okay, I mean, they were sophisticated enough to realize Mary Shelley was not suggesting that inanimate matter could be brought back to life. Okay, so the obvious question is, why would this novel, when it was published, and I should point out, even today, is often a very uncomfortable read for the devoutly religious. What about this novel would make it such? Okay. So that's one question about this novel. There's another really intriguing approach that one can take with this novel, and it has to do with real life applications. So for example, just imagine for a moment, there you are working in your lab late at night, you're a scientist, and through some crazy stroke of genius luck, all of a sudden you acquire this drop, which when placed on the tongue of a dead mouse, immediately brings the mouse back to life. And on your first studies of the mouse, you realize that the mouse has perfect health. You are fortunate, shall we say it enough, that your lab exists in the same building as a pal of yours who's a coroner. You take a drop of this with you in a vial down into the basement where your pal is there alone working on a dead body, and you say, I got to try something, I just need you to leave the room for a second. You drop this stuff onto the tongue of this corpse, immediately reanimates it, comes back in perfect health. The question is, what do you do now with this newfound power that you have? You can bring the dead back to life. It seems to me you have one of two options only available to you. One, immediately destroy this intel and pretend like it never came to you at all. Never use it, never speak of it. Okay, that's one option. A second option is to use it, either immediately or later, to hold on to it in some way. Some students will report, ooh, I feel very uncomfortable about using something like this. To which I then will make this that much more difficult for you. So you decide, I'm not going to use it right now, but I'm not going to destroy it. Because I'm in a philosophic, ethical quandary about this. And so I'll hold on to it. And tragically, you get a phone call that your mother or someone that you love deeply has just been in a terrible car accident and is lying in intensive care, and you rush down to intensive care, and as you come into the room, the person you love the most flatlines. You have the power to bring that individual back to life. Your mother, your father, your lover, whoever. All it takes is one drop on the tongue. By the way, in this ethical dilemma, as I'm creating it, don't get hung up on the nuances of the question. Well, yeah, but if she had cancer, does it come back and she'll have... Don't get hung up with this, all right? We're asking a philosophic question based on a hypothetical. My question to you is very simple. You have the power to bring this individual back from the dead. Do you do it? How many of you say, yeah, I'm going to bring my mama back from the dead because I got the power to do it? Or someone I love?
I do it.
Okay, how many of us say, no way, not even the person I love the most, I'm not bringing people back from the dead. Hurrah, I'm so happy someone had the courage to say no way. So now I'm going to complicate the question even more for Miss Sin and the rest of you by saying it this way. When you show up at the doctor's, at the intensive care, it's not flatlined. We're not flatlined. But rather, the person you love the most is lying there and is soon about to flatline. And the doctors come to you and say, your person who you love is about to flatline, but we have a way to save her. This thing, boom, boom. This thing, you can put boom, boom. Right on their chest, it brings them right back to life. Are you okay with using that? The person's not dead yet. Miss Sin, are you okay with using that technology? Boom, boom. Yeah, she's not dead yet. See, Sin says, I'm not quite dead.
Technically, it can bring you back to flatlining too.
Oh, wait. Now see, our future doctor will point out to us, Mr. Schreiber, is there any real philosophic difference between your mama being completely dead, as in flatlined, and coming back with the drop of some pill you've created, and your mom going immediately to flatline and boom, with technology brings her back? Philosophically, there is not one iota of difference, and Mr. Schreiber is absolutely right. Philosophically, there is not a single bit of difference. Think of it this way: if you don't do one of these, boom, your mama's dead.
And CPR.
We can think of other forms of technology, correct?
That doesn't always work, though.
Doesn't always work, does it? But as I said, don't get hung up with the nuances. The fact that it doesn't always work does not belie the fact these are identical situations where, let's now say it for your notes, technology tries to challenge mortality. Right? I mean, if you think about it, that's all technology does in medicinal cases of any number of kinds.
But if you were to like drop it on your mom's tongue after she's like dead, like how would she come back though?
See, here again, guys, don't get hung up with the nuances of the question. We're asking a philosophic question. The utilization of technologies to challenge the borders of mortality.
So is like the reason that they think it's atheistic is because they think it's like kind of like Jesus coming back to life thing, or what?
All right, let's address the question of why is it the case that this novel was so upsetting to religious readers and, quite frankly, a lot of religious readers today. Mr. Sherman wants to go there. We should. First of all, let's point out the title. Everyone knows the title is Frankenstein. Only scholars point out, and we are soon to be one of them, that the full title of this novel is not Frankenstein. It's right there on your packet. You might take a look at it. It is Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. That's the title. That's the title of the novel. Now that doesn't do much for us unless we know who Prometheus is. Do we all remember who Prometheus is? That famous cat who, of course, discovers fire, and he's going to give fire to humans, and Zeus says, absolutely not. Prometheus says, up yours, I'll do it anyway, to Zeus. Delivers the fire, and for it, of course, is crucified on a rock where an eagle comes and eats out his heart every day. Throughout the entire painful process, Prometheus refuses to repent, and constantly will say to Zeus, up yours. I would have done it again. I would do it again. Total defiance. Total defiance. Shelley loved that story, as did the Greeks. When this novel is read as metaphor, when this novel is read as allegory, we have a story about a creator who creates a monster. Unofficiated readers to this novel will call the monster Frankenstein. Of course, if you know this novel, you know that that's completely fallacious. The scientist in the novel is named Frankenstein, and he wishes to overcome the bounds of mortality. That is to say, to beat death. The monster's never given a name. But what does the creator to the monster do immediately after he creates? Well, he immediately repents for having done it, doesn't he? He completely relinquishes all responsibility and he leaves the monster abandoned. The monster then will turn around and seek for some kind of help, but society will reject him because he's hideous. Body parts have been sewn together. And in the process of the rejection, the monster will begin to commit acts of crime. Which begs a really intriguing question. In this novel, when the monster does terrible bad things, who do you blame? Do you blame the monster? Or are you more inclined to blame the creator of the monster, Dr. Frankenstein, who creates this being and then completely walks away from him? And then the monster does all kinds of bad things. See, it's kind of like this. The kid walks into the Big Mac. He doesn't like the fact he didn't get pickles on his sandwich, and so he blows away several people. When this happens, the obvious question is, who do you blame? Who do you hold responsible? Right? Do you hold responsible the kid who blew away all those people? Or do you hold responsible somebody else? For example, if I were to tell you this young man had been brutally abused most of his life, you immediately have a sense to say, maybe it's hard to hold the kid fully responsible for his acts. In the novel Frankenstein, sophisticated readers saw real quickly Shelley has raised a really disturbing question. You can't really hold a monster responsible for the terrible things the monster does. The monster is left alone, on his own, to figure it out. And he's rejected by a society of humans, and in the process he becomes acrimonious to those humans and begins to do terrible things. But if you're going to hold Dr. Frankenstein responsible, and it's fairly clear that this novel does hold Dr. Frankenstein responsible. He is a scientist who creates something he then cannot control. Readers of this novel saw in Oppenheimer and the rest of those creating the atomic weapons of the mid-20th century, obviously some dark parallels. You can create the technology, but if you can't control the technology, who is responsible for the terrible things that happen? This novel immediately then can be seen as a blasphemous novel by religious readers who will say, if human beings do terrible things on this planet, human beings cannot be held responsible. The Creator must be held responsible. Now, of course, this is not new territory for us. This is just a reworking of the theodicy question of Milton's Paradise Lost. The book that the monster uses to learn how to read. And some of you will begin to understand, while you've only maybe been kind of dipping your toe into these pools because you haven't been reading these works, but reading plot summaries of these works, that's okay. You'll begin to grow sophisticated as scholars as you age, and you'll come back to read some of these books, and you'll recognize these novels are challenging you on fundamental levels to think about the world in which you inhabit. No novel does that so cleanly as Shelley's Frankenstein. Of course, there's another reading of this novel, and it has to do with issues of environmentalism, the destroying of the environment through our own technologies. What would it mean to imagine that we actually destroy ourselves because of our own technologies? What a fascinating idea, and yet here it is in this quite remarkable novel written by, or of all things, an 18-year-old girl who has a strange dream while she's hanging out one night on the estate of Lord Byron. She will report she had a strange dream. And from that dream, this novel is produced. What some will argue is really the last modern myth, as read as allegory or symbolism.
She's 18, isn't she?
Yeah, isn't that quite remarkable? It's quite remarkable. So there you go, an introduction. Questions? What are you going to do with the pill? Obviously abound. You going to use this pill or not use this pill? Come back, maybe we'll